Welcome to the translation process, the challenges of translating from one language to another. Translations convert messages from one language to another. Let's start with some background about the translation process. Languages are designed to express meaning that people want to communicate to others. Most of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. A small portion was written in Aramaic. The New Testament was written entirely in Greek. Hebrew and Greek are very different from English. They have different alphabets. They have different grammar. Hebrew even reads from right to left instead of left to right like English or Greek. The New Testament is written in Koine or Common Greek, the everyday language of the New Testament world. It's important to note that God wanted to express his revelation in the everyday language of the people. The fundamental element of a language are its words. Let's start by looking at words. Words have denotations. That's actually the real meaning, what the word actually stands for. Words also have connotations. These are implied meanings for the word, not the actual definition of the word. Words also have context. The context actually provides a framework that gives meaning to the word. For an example of how context affects meaning, let's look at the phrase, "give me a table." If I'm in a restaurant and I ask for a table, I'm asking to be seated for a meal. If I'm in a furniture store, I'm asking for an end table or a dining room table. If I'm in a math class, I'm asking for an array of numbers with columns and rows. The context affects the meaning. Now let's look at grammar. Grammar is a set of rules that explain how words are used in language to transmit meaning. One of the fundamental elements of grammar are parts of speech. There are many parts of speech. The basics are the nouns and the verbs. And then there are modifiers like the adjectives and adverbs, and the other words like interjections and conjunctions and pronouns. They're all fundamental parts of speech. Now let's listen to a rap about the parts
and you
of
probably
speech.
know that there are several of the types of words. So if you yearn to learn a recite to teach, now listen up and let me tell you about the parts of speech. A noun is a person or a place or a thing, like you or your school or all your bling bling. But the tricky kind of nouns are ideas and thoughts, like your strength or intelligence. Man, there are lots of these nouns. To list them all, that would be impressive. But to describe them, all we need are adjectives like hot, cool, false, true, spicy, or bland. And now I think you understand. So you wanna know about nouns, you wanna know about verbs, and you probably know that there are several other types of words. So if you yearn to learn a recite to teach, now listen up and let me tell you about the parts of speech. Verbs, that's what we call the action words. Anything you can do, even if it's absurd. Whenever you eat, drink, move, think, go, or stop. Even if you just are, that's a verb that you got.
But Mr. Jackson, how do I describe these words?
Use another part of speech we call adverbs, like loudly, proudly, and well. Don't ask me why, but most of them end in ly. So you wanna know about nouns, you wanna know about verbs, and you probably know that there are several other types of words. So if you yearn to learn a recite to teach, now listen up and let me tell you about the parts of speech. A preposition gives location, so you know whether an object is between, in, by, or below. But it can also talk about time. As a matter of fact, if something happens before this, or it's gonna happen after that, they always got a prepositional phrase. It's a traditional way that every preposition operates. So just make sure that the object is there, or else you never know what goes where. So you wanna know about nouns, you wanna know about verbs, and you probably know that there are several other types of words. So if you yearn to learn a recite to teach, now listen up and let me tell you about the parts of speech. A conjunction joins phrases and words together, like and, but, or, as, if, and whether. Some come appear in pairs like neither or nor. You know I'd love to list them all, but there are so many more. So let's go on to pronouns. They replace nouns, so you can say it instead of saying the same noun. Again, it can be just a breeze, you see, instead the name saying he or she. So you wanna know about— hold up! Almost forgot about the next one. I'm speaking, of course, of the interjection, like, yo, yikes.
Oh yeah.
You know the parts of speech? Well, I think you do now. And now you know about nouns, and you know about verbs, and you probably know that there are several other types of words. So if you yearn to learn A, the psych to teach, and now we got an understanding of the parts of speech.
There are a number of challenges in translating from one language to another. First and foremost, languages are not equal. The denotations of different words don't line up very well. The connotations definitely do not line up. The grammars do not line up. And then the areas which they are very, very focused on being very specific are very, very different. They are not equal. Next, languages change. English is dynamic. It's always changing as time goes on. It makes it difficult to translate into what amounts to a moving target. One example of how meanings change is in the King James Version of Luke 18:16. Jesus says, "Suffer little children come unto me." Why would Jesus say suffer? Well, suffer back then meant permit or allow, not pain. Meanings change. The theology of the translator is an additional translation challenge. Should we translate word for word, thought for thought, or paraphrase the passage? Depending on the theological foundation of the translator, they'll come up with one of these solutions. Figuring out which is right is truly a real translation challenge. I hope you've enjoyed the brief overview of the translation process. We'll be examining many of the topics that we've raised in much more depth as we go through the class.